Excellent. So tonight's speakers are going to tell us all about the restoration project that's been happening at Hainault Forest. It's a work in progress, but it's going to be fantastic to find out how much progress has been made. So we have two speakers with us this evening. Ieva Aliejunaite, who is a community forest ranger at Hainault Forest. She is particularly involved with volunteer coordination trust. The work that's been happening at Hainault Forest is a partnership project, and he's the visitor experience manager for the Woodland Trust. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, and I'm going to hand you over initially to George.
All righty. Good evening, everyone.
Hello.
Unfortunately, my internet has been hit by lightning, so I'm hotspotting off my phone. So apologies if I'm a bit patchy. I'll try and talk as slowly as I can, so if I do cut out at all, you at least catch the gist of what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, your screen share is fine now.
Perfect. Okay, so Hainault Forest, where do we start? I guess the start of Hainault Forest's history starts at the end of the last ice age, about 10,000 years ago, when we had our first or original Brexit, and the ice retreated and it left a wild wood that grew all across the UK. But I won't start quite there. We'll start at the Royal Forests. Oh yeah, some contents. I'm going to walk whistle-stop tour through the history, the pivotal moment when Hainault Forest lost 90% of what was left, and the birthplace of the woodland conservation movement, which then went into an incredible reforestation effort that we'd love to sort of replicate all across the country, but is reclaiming some of that lost Hainault. A bit about what the Woodland Trust is doing now for management, creating new habitats, looking after our veteran trees, and then I'll hand over to Ieva, who is going to talk to us about the National Heritage Lottery Fund project, which has been happening down at Hainault for the last few years, where we've got this fancy new branding from, where we've got new facilities, and the activity plan that she's been delivering over the last couple of years.
Thank you.
So as I say, 1130s where we start the story of Hainault Forest and the creation of the Royal Forests. The Forest of Essex, created by the Normans, stretched from London all the way to the coast. It was very much a forest with a capital F. A royal forest was not necessarily a densely wooded area, but it was an administrative legal structure that was there to protect the beasts of the chase. So you have venison, hare, boar, animals living within that forest were protected for the crown, for hunting, often portrayed like this, this painting here, but more likely, if you've ever been to Epping Forest and visited the hunting lodge there, the beasts, the venison, the deer would have been driven towards whoever was doing the hunting, and quite lazily they would have sat there with their bow and arrow waiting for dinner to come to them. Forest law was very much a punitive system to protect the deer. If you had dogs, for example, their claws would be clipped so they could cause no damage to the venison. You had to pay your taxes, and they were a great source of income for the crown's pocket. And the Royal Forest sort of existed from the Forest of Essex from 1130s until about the 13th century, when the forests were dissolved, and the Forest of Essex, which we can share a link for the digital map of the whole forest, was separated into four distinct areas. So you had Waltham Forest, which Hainault was part of, along with Epping Forest. You had Hatfield Forest up near Bishop Stortford, Writtle Forest, and Kingswood, which was near Colchester. And if you lived in the forest, you were paying your taxes, you weren't touching the deer, but you did have some rights. So you had rights of estover and pannage, estover being the right to turn out your pigs so they could snuffle on acorns. Pannage, the right that you can see here, is the collecting of firewood or pollarding trees. Very important for Hainault. We look after about 6,000 veteran hornbeam pollards that, similarly to this, would have been pruned, pollarded at sort of a two bit meter height every 15 to 20 years, so people could collect wood for charcoal making, for fodder for their cattle. Really interestingly, the pollards at Hainault are about a foot taller than the pollards at Epping Forest, although only sort of 6 miles apart. The thinking is the ash ladders that were used by the commoners of Hainault were made by someone different to the commoners of Epping Forest. That's why our pollards are a slightly different height. All these sort of commoners' histories you can still see in lots of the names of areas around the forest. Collier's Row is just round the corner, and Collier's coal originally would have been charcoal makers. So a very industrial landscape, not what we see in the forest at the moment.
I have a little fun fact for the pollards from Hainault. A lot of the pollards that were used were used as charcoal. So the colliers would create charcoal for the bakeries of London way back when.
And we're not saying that the Great Fire of London was started with Hainault charcoal.
No, only baked goods.
Only baked goods. So under forest law, it was very important to measure your forest, and every so often there would be perambulations, or the sheriffs of the forest would walk around the edge of the forest and measure it out, and it would shrink, and there would be enclosure, and areas would be lost. But very much an industrial area. This map here, I need to find my laser pointer, is the area in 1849, which is sort of the start of the pivotal point for Hainault. And expanding London was very interested in more farmland to feed an expanding London. And Hainault had for a very long time been used for timber for the Navy, so straight down the River Roding onto the Thames, down to Chatham Docks. Samuel Pepys, Charles Dickens were writing about all the wood that was coming out of the forest. And it's a tradition that we're sort of continuing today, where wood is coming out of the forest and some is going off to the Sutton Hoo Shipbuilding Company to make some ships, although definitely not on the scale that it once was. But in the mid-19th century, a commission was set up to look at the forest, look at the Royal Forest, and see how they could be better used. There's this great sort of toing and froing in the local papers and the national papers about what was to be done with the forest. So there was a side that saw the forests as areas of waste. We're not using the timber anymore. We are not charcoal making. They don't provide any products. They should be turned over to farmland. And then there was another side, the side that obviously resonates with ourselves, is the forest needs to be protected for the East Enders, local people. It was their space of recreation. People would come out in carriages to enjoy the forest. But the commission that was set up eventually managed to convince the government to remove the forestal protections. And in 1851, the Disafforestation of Hainault Act was passed, and the Crown was reimbursed tidy sum for losing the forest. And these steam ploughs were brought in. So 90% of the forest was ripped up in 6 short weeks. We're talking hundreds of thousands of trees.
Big areas of land.
Incredible amount of space. If you're looking at this map,
Yeah,
it's about this area that was left. I know the scale's not easy to read, but 90% all ripped out. If you tried to get contractors, volunteers, staff, anyone to recreate this feat,
it would be challenging. It would be challenging in this day and age, let alone 150 years ago.
And rightly so, this caused a stir amongst local people, and in particular, this gentleman here. This is Edward North Buxton, who was a High Sheriff and Verderer of Epping Forest. He was an MP. He spearheaded the campaign to save Hainault Forest, what was left. He managed to rally local support, convince the London County Council to purchase what was left of the forest. And for us, this is the birth of woodland conservation. It was the first time someone's sort of stepped out and said, we need to protect ancient woodland for the people of London. He was also a member of the Commons Preservation Society, which went on to save your Hampstead Heaths, your Clapham Commons. A pivotal figure then at Epping Forest, when the Epping Forest Act of 1878 was passed, protect Epping Forest. If his campaigning work hadn't started at Hainault, maybe they wouldn't have had the momentum that went into Epping Forest. And after, this is actually a great map here. This patch here of Hainault Forest is what was saved. This was privately owned by the first Baron of Lambourne, Colonel Lockwood. And the area that we now manage today is this ancient woodland and then the fields here. But after protecting the forest, Mr. Buxton started a campaign to reforest the site. And what he was doing was really novel. I guess today we would be calling it rewilding or recolonisation. He trialled out sort of ploughing the land and importing or transporting tree seed from Epping Forest. He's transported beech trees and created beech woodlands around. We have a project coming up with UCL to genetically map some of our trees, and it'd be really interesting to see how genetically similar some of the trees we have are with some of the veterans of Epping Forest. But a nice quote here: the Hainault that was saved, 800 acres, was larger than Hyde Park and Kensington Gardens together. So it was quite a patch that was saved. But considering this was the 10% left, it's just phenomenal what was lost so quickly. But fortunately, he did save what we have now. And this is a photo of him in 1906, reopening the forest as common land for common people, and under the management of the London County Council. It was, it was a remnant of the ancient woodland, but there were 4 farms created, which were then, which I now call my home as the visitor centres of the forest. But this is what was saved: arable land, and in the background you've got some scrub into the ancient woodland. And this is a photo from 1938. So you can see his reforestation efforts up at the top here. Lots of gorse and heathland coming back, which are now, when you all come and visit Hainault Forest, the 90% of you that haven't visited, you'll see a lot more of that across the landscape. So this is Hainault Forest today, or at least in 2021. The ancient woodland at the back here is now connected to the secondary woodland. So if I flick back and forth, you can see the lake here and the scrubland that's recolonising. That's the same lake now with secondary woodland around it. There's a golf course that was also part of that land that was saved. But this gets us on to the modern day when Woodland Trust in 1998 took on a 50-year lease for the management of our half of Hainault Forest, which is owned by Essex County Council. And we have sort of three main priorities. We want to protect the ancient woodland, in particular the veteran trees. We want to create and buffer and regenerate some of that forest that was lost. So since this photo was taken, we have planted up or acquired, with the support of the GLA, this field here and a field here that we planted up with over 1,000 volunteers during National Tree Week, and that would be our second extension to the forest. So slowly reclaiming some of the forest that was lost to buffer the ancient woodland. But it's also an incredible opportunity for us to engage with a diverse urban audience. So yeah, here's some photos from my tree planting events. We planted 24,000 trees over 2 weeks. So it took 100,000 trees ripped out in 6 weeks. 2 weeks we managed to get 24,000 in. If we get more land, we'd plant more trees. Hopefully you can get a sense of the scale of our planting event. Some quick drone clip. So I touched on it, but the pollard trees of Hainault, primarily a hornbeam. We've got about 6,000 veteran hornbeams and a few thousand veteran oak trees. They are a key characteristic of the forest that we want to protect. They're between sort of 500, 800 years old. They're their own niche habitat. There's a spider recorded at Hainault Forest called the Midas spider, which I believe has only been recorded in 5 other places across the country, and in particular lives in veteran hornbeam. So it's important we protect them, not just for the Midas spider, but for the sort of the oasis of habitat, the mosaic that the veteran trees are. And what we're doing to look after them and extend their life is sympathetically trying to restore or readdress the wood pasture system that has been lost in the forest. Edward North Buxton had a fairly hands-off approach to the management, apart from where he was doing his replanting and seeding efforts. And the wood pasture that would have been managed with grazing animals by the commoners and the pollarding that was done regularly was all stopped. In fact, in Edward North Buxton's sort of management plan, he talked about how pollarding was such a ghastly practice to butcher trees, which we now know for our veterans is an important thing to extend and rejuvenate their life. This tree, I do have a pointer here, is one of those successfully re-pollarded trees. We've got a few more here, but the style of re-pollarding we're trialing is I believe a Mediterranean style called shredding, where instead of re-pollarding back to your height quite aggressively, we start at the top and re-pollard downwards a bit more every pollarding cycle to extend their life. But to support the pollarded trees restoring that wood pasture habitat, we're having to remove a lot of the younger trees, in particular sort of younger oaks that are around the veteran trees, to give them more light, so they have less stresses, less pressures when they grow back. So this is a photo of me not being a tree, but one of the the bonuses of letting more light into your forest is you get more wildflowers. And this is our current map. So in comparison to the maps we had in the past, the Woodland Trust manages this patch of ancient woodland, which is a site of special scientific interest for its assemblage of woodland birds. We have our first extension of 54 acres, some that's been planted, some that's been recolonized, rewilded, regenerated, has our veterans of the future and has grazing system in there. And then this is our most recent extension, which has been planted and again has natural recolonisation, wetlands, replanting. We've got a variety of, I think we've got 19 different tree species that we planted there. A lot of it was Hainault and oak to marry up with what Hainault Forest already has. But everything is UK and Ireland sourced and grown, which is obviously important for the Woodland Trust. And then I'll leave you with Ieva and the future of the project, the real modern day, who manages the other half of the project. But we are one forest working together.
It's from the project, so I will talk about more about the project, but the project is essentially to kind of marry up the two organizations. Currently, as George was saying, that the north side, so if you could point out that part again for me, George, yes, that's the north side. The ancient forest is managed by the Woodland Trust, and the southern and eastern side is kind of the Vision, Redbridge and Culture. And part of the National Heritage Lottery Fund, which I will go into more depth in a little second, kind of is to join the two forces, join the two organizations, because the forest doesn't know that there is a divide.
There's one forest for people.
There's only one forest. As far as the forest can see, there's only one forest. So it is kind of getting the management, kind of the management plans bundled up together so everything can be managed as one single unit. Which that was great. Thank you. All right, let me share my screen. Hello, everyone. So I'm Ieva. Thank you, George, for doing the first half. So let's go share. Where is it? Nope. Sorry. There we are.
Yeah, that's it.
All right, guys. So since 2019, Vision RCL, or Redbridge and Culture, has been in partnership with the London Borough of Redbridge. They successfully secured £7 million of funding to restore and enhance the forest. The funding has come from various sources, primarily from the National Heritage Lottery Fund, as well as the Mayor's Fund for the Greater London Authority, and from Redbridge Council. As well as this, there was £45,000 awarded from the Garfield Weston Foundation, which went to a major part of restoring Hainault Forest. So this is a picture from Hainault, from the Vision side. The project's vision is to make Hainault Forest a better place to celebrate and enhance the unique heritage, character and the environment of the site. Establishing and improving the recreation, the learning, the volunteering, the education side of it, as well as creating a financially resilient and lasting sustainable legacy for future generations to come. So big project. I have a little video here that kind of explains in a nutshell what has happened in the last year. So the work started in September 2021. There were a lot of delays due to kind of COVID, Brexit, everything else in between. So there is a nice little kind of summary of roughly 4 minutes long of explaining, kind of showing you what it looks like, what it looked like before, what it looks like currently, or as it did a year ago. Actually, there's been a lot more improvement since then.
I'm not getting any sound, Ieva. I don't know if there's a way to...
Let's see, new share, advanced audio. Hold on. Sound share. No, screen. Sound share.
Sound share sounds about right.
Is the whole family, even our dogs, and it's a great place to visit, great place to be. It's just paradise here in Redbridge. Me and the residents. It's a fantastic place to come, a safe haven, and we found that out through the pandemic, that this was a place which our residents flocked to. And I certainly come here in that time between Christmas and New Year's, the whole family, even our dogs, and it's a great place to visit, great place to be. It's just paradise here in Redbridge.
Rad, project manager for Buxton Building Contractors. I'm in charge of the management of the project. Through various challenges on the project, we had to do a lot of propping because the buildings are that old that they are generally quite unstable. So the old brickwork was built using lime mortar, and therefore there's no cement in it at all. So they basically stay up on weight. But back in the obviously 1800s, that's what they built with. When we build new buildings, we would be using the same process of lime mortar with no cement, so it matches the existing.
My name is Nathan Jongitz. I am site manager for Blakedown Landscapes. We're doing this landscaping to this project. Most of the project is here. This place here is going to be public area, like sitting. It's a long path by the gates, and the fence goes to huge, big play area.
My name is Ieva, Aliejunaite, and I am the Community Forest Ranger at Hainault Forest. What I'm personally excited about is having a first-class volunteering and event programme here on the forest to be able to provide opportunities for training, for being outdoors, for helping out with the management plan on site. As well as that, I'm excited for the new indoor facilities that will be available and the opportunities that it will provide the wider community through it. Our volunteer sessions are very varied and change week to week depending on what needs to be done on site. These can change between tree planting to forest management. As well as this, when the farm opens, volunteers will be able to be on site, helping the staff take care of the animals.
So the changes I'm most looking forward to seeing actually is around the partnership. The Woodland Trust and London Borough of Redbridge both own half of the forest each, but there's a real opportunity now, in a time where we're facing a twinned biodiversity and climate crisis. Our UK wildlife has never needed us more. So what an amazing time for the two organisations to come together and really make a difference. It's a fantastic opportunity.
It's an incredible site. It's full of history. It has a story of people coming together over centuries, and full of future prospects with our tree planting that we've got going on here. And we've got 24,000 trees being planted right now. It's a melting pot of social history and conservation history. So it's a place where we can bring people, wildlife together for the benefit of both.
Changes I'm looking forward to is the fact that we can regenerate, we can pick up new ideas. We got the the barn's being renovated behind me. We got the new visitor centre. And of course, the money will really uplift the forest. A little bit of regeneration will mean that the forest itself will deliver more for the residents, particularly future generations, children, schools, who will come here and really be able to enjoy the wildlife which is here on offer.
All right, so hopefully that gave you a bit of insight into what the forest looks like, especially for those that have never been. Super exciting stuff. Super exciting stuff. Can you guys see my screen? All right.
Yeah, that's fine.
Wonderful. So, you guys saw what the forest looked like. You both saw my face and George's face in that video. That was done about a year ago, kind of documenting the progress that had happened then. There has been a lot of development since. The barns are now restored. There is a cafe open. There is the arts-based kind of crafts workshops currently happening, but I'll get to that. So out of the project, there are a few kind of delivery goals, key delivery areas that Vision wants to improve upon. One of them is to improve the site's condition for ecology and its natural habitats, especially in the northern side of the forest where the Triple SI area lies, so where we were pointing out in the map. And yeah, that's kind of, we are moving towards improving these areas. The second goal, or the second key achievement that we would like to do, is the successful restoration of the old Victorian barns. And like I said, this has now been mostly, on the grand scheme of things, completed. So we have George's visitor centre here in both parts. This is on the picture on the left is what it looked like midway through the project, and the picture on the right is what it looks like on the inside currently. And it is beautiful, it's warm, everything works. So there are top quality visitor facilities where anyone can come in and ask questions about the site, ask questions about the ecology, get as much information about the events as possible. As well as this, there's also the cafe facilities, like I was saying, where there is an indoor conference space, which can be used for various events, from community events to commercial events, such as weddings, to kind of conferences. Along with this, I don't actually have a picture of this, unfortunately, I do apologize. There are workshops, so we have small units that were previously, everything was completely decayed. The place hadn't been touched in many decades, which have been restored and now have local craftsmen. So we have glass blowers, we have, who else do we have? We have
a painter.
We have a painter, we have woodworkers, laser wood artists. Is there anyone else that I'm missing out? There is, I feel like there is one more, but there are a bunch of kind of creative spaces, and a place where Vision, where the forest can create some sort of income, which is what will allow us to continue the work that is being done in the forest. Along with this is kind of where my expertise lie. So myself, I am the community ranger. We had another community ranger. She unfortunately had to leave. I developed the volunteer program, and the other part of the role develops the education program. So over the last year and a half, we have been developing a big push to provide opportunities, training, volunteering, experience to the local community as much as possible. So Hainault is one of the most deprived boroughs in London, and therefore this is one of the main reasons why Hainault Forest got the funding that it did. So we can provide that funding, provide those opportunities and experiences for those that really need it. So this is a picture of some of my volunteers out on site doing the good work. So this was hedge laying prep. I will show you a picture of this exact same hedge laid. It's one of my proudest achievements, I think, as a ranger. I have another little video that will kind of explain the activity plan. So the activity plan is essentially the part of the Lottery Heritage Fund project that covers the education and the volunteering. So it is a set aside piece, a set amount of money, a set aside staff, so myself and the other education ranger development officer, that works solely on creating a community, creating the space for education. So yeah, let me see if this will work again for me. I'd really like this to hit. Nope, that one.
Hello and welcome to Hainault Forest. The forest is undergoing a big heritage restoration project at the moment, and we hope you can see the positive changes being made. This includes the appointment of 2 new community forest rangers, thanks to funding from the National Lottery Heritage Fund. We are delighted to tell you all about the exciting things that are happening here, which you can be a part of.
Volunteering at Hainault Forest is a great way to help support nature and your local community, giving you the opportunity to learn new skills, meet new people, and improve your physical and mental well-being. We offer various different volunteer sessions here in Hainault Forest, which include Monday forest cleanups, which help keep our forests clean and tidy after a busy weekend. On Fridays and Saturdays, we also run forest workdays, where we carry out a range of woodland and countryside management tasks. On the last Wednesday of every month, we run a women's-only forest workday session. Corporate volunteering is available for your company to help you reach your social responsibility goals and provide team-building activities. When the farm is open, we've run volunteer sessions to help with daily activities, such as feeding, mucking out, and grooming the animals. Recruited volunteers will help with various events at the forest, including our forest school sessions, where they will help prep activities and manage groups. You can also get involved with biological surveys with our citizen science projects. We are involved with different campaigns to record and protect our beloved wildlife. No previous skills are required. You will be fully inducted and trained. We advise you to bring sturdy shoes, outdoor clothing, lunch, and a bottle of water. No registration is needed. Just show up on the day. We provide the rest. To get more information, you can find it in our newsletter, Facebook and Instagram pages, as well as the Vision Redbridge Culture and Leisure website.
This is our Apple Day Festival, a day packed of family fun for all. Each year we have 3 orchard-themed festivals to celebrate the seasons and to get the family together for a new kind of outdoor experience. Watch out for other large family events throughout the year. We have lots of other events for every age range. On Mondays we run Little Acorns, a preschool group teaching children about nature and all the fun that is to be had there. Stay and play with your little ones and start the week off right. For older children, we have everything from making forest arts and crafts, learning to track animals and ID what we find, exploring bushcraft such as how to make shelters and dens, and so much more. For teenagers, we run group walks and talks, youth bushcraft events, and photography competitions as well. Adults, we have sessions for you too. These include bushcraft activities such as whittling a mallet, forest bathing, ID walks, and art workshops just like this one.
And kind of goes on to list some other activities. And for those that have been to the forest and kind of live nearby, please do come along. We have plenty of things happening. So, oh, give me a second. Oh. There we go. So, that hopefully gave you an idea of the kind of things that we run in the forest, and the type of activities that we carry out. So the side of the events has kind of slowed down a little bit since the education ranger had to leave, and we are getting another. So this is some of the events that we have done. I won't go into great detail. So this one specifically was for the wassail. We've had 2 wassails. I don't know if you guys know what a wassail is. I did not before I started the job. So it is essentially a celebration for kind of apples and a fruitful harvest for the next year. You have a bunch of activities going from everything's escaped my mind now.
It's
From kind of
blessing of the orchard trees, isn't it?
exactly,
It's singing,
exactly.
dancing, and drinking some cider.
Exactly, and you put some bread on the orchard. Sometimes you put a little bit of cider on the orchards. It's a whole event activity. It's great. I mean, it's in the middle of winter, so after Christmas, it's actually quite a nice activity to get involved in. Apart from that, so since 2021, we've had an incredible amount of engagement in the forest, considering there were no events, and there was some volunteering several years ago before we started, but there were no events prior to this. So since 2021, we have had 63 events aimed at children, adults, which totaled over 2,600 participants. Some of them included walks led by community rangers. We are partnering with a bushcraft activity called Tinder Sticks. So they provide various types of bushcraft events for little ones to kind of teenagers all the way to adults, and are really successful. We also have adult events such as bushcrafting and walks and kind of talks as well, identification, species identification, surveys. Yeah, loads and loads of stuff on events. Kind of where my field lies is the volunteers, and I'm going to go into detail with what we have been doing. So this kind of goes into the management of the forest. We kind of go in line with the management plans, with the management plan, as well as with the consultation with the ecologist. We create plans and we create training sessions for the volunteers. So the picture on the top right hand corner is leaky log dam creation. I don't know if any of you guys know what leaky log dam creation is. Essentially, it's creating dams in a stream with natural resources like logs. So this was a training session provided by Thames 21. Any of those that live in London, you may have heard of this organisation. And essentially, this is to create natural flood management. We have issues of pollution and flooding. So this is to hold back water. The volunteers go out and build these dams, essentially. The picture on the right hand corner, that is us planting a new orchard. So since 2021, we have planted 2 orchards successfully. By the way, I'm very proud, considering there was a really big heat wave last year. The volunteers have worked so hard trying to water every single tree that was planted. When we had temperatures well over kind of 35-40 degrees, it was hard, but we made sure that most of our trees survived, especially the big trees or the orchards that were 2-3 years old that were put into the ground. Each one of them survived, which is just wonderful. So this is the hedge that I was saying, the picture where everything was really green and everything overlapped. So during this winter, we trained the volunteers with a local hedge laying group, kind of the skill of hedge laying of the south of England style. We trained 32 unique volunteers. It took over 400 volunteer hours, and 11 sessions to lay this hedge. We are so proud of this whole massive achievement. For those that may not know what hedge laying is, or may not know what kind of the benefits of it are, so the process is essentially taking a tree, cutting it most of the way, so you have only the cambium layer, and you lay the tree uphill because trees like to go up. The nutrients like to go up, and the benefits kind of extend the life of a tree. It creates habitats. So we don't have any cattle in this specific field, but if you were, a lot of the hedgerows that we create are to control kind of cattle through natural fences. It's wonderful, a wonderful project to be a part of. Other projects include creating various types of woody structures, habitats. So this is what the volunteers called stump towers. This picture does not show you the true scale of this wood structure. It is about 1 meter in the ground, about 1.5 meters up from the ground, and it's about 2 meters wide and 1.5 meters deep, kind of. So this whole pond was not there previously. It was funded by the Environment Agency, I believe, to scoop out the ground, and the volunteers were basically left with, the volunteer team was basically left with a project that we created into this, essentially. So through building various types of woody structures, from dead hedges to stumperies, we have now planted hazel and planted a bunch of other trees. We have created a space where we have hedgehog activity for the first time since we started monitoring this area. We saw fallow deer for the first time in this area through camera traps. There's so much fungi, so many different types of fungi. So loads of incredible things happening. I was saying about the orchards. So we work with the Orchard Project to plant as well as maintain orchards. So teaching the volunteers how to prune, how to mulch, how to weed, why we do these things. And our orchards are blossoming. So this is our pear this year. We've also done a bunch of planting. So since 2021, we've planted over 5,000 tree whips and some bigger trees. So this is the volunteer team with Dutch elm disease resistant elm. And thanks to the Elms for London organization, they donated 5 disease resistant elms. This is one of them. They are doing well. The volunteers take care of these. They mulch them, we weed them, we water them when we need to. Currently, we haven't needed to because there's a lot of water currently. Along with this, so we have survey volunteers. So Izzy would have led most of the survey volunteers in Hainault Forest. We had a small group of volunteers that go out essentially each week and monitor what they find, especially when it's warmer. At the moment, it's been quite windy and quite rainy, so the conditions haven't been ideal. But since starting these projects, we have identified 11 species of bees, 55 bumblebees, individual bumblebees with over 11 species, 747 butterflies across 21 species. And most excitingly, last year we found the shrill carder bee, which has not been found in this part of the UK. So super rare. It is the Bee Conservation Trust. We're very excited. So we're looking forward to expand this project into this year and hopefully find some more of these. So these are some of the organizations that we've worked with. The list kind of goes on as well. So some of the stuff, so like I mentioned, 10 to 21, Woodland Trust is here with us, the Orchard Project. We work with youth groups as well. So the youth groups, youth clubs join myself for volunteering. So I provide experiences for them to get out in nature and learn how to kind of use tools, how to perform kind of nature conservation activities. Bumblebee Trust, like I said, Elms for London. And yeah, so loads of exciting things. So this kind of goes all together, the management of the forest, both on the Woodland Trust side and the vision side. I'm responsible for the volunteers, as if you haven't noticed. Basically the rangers, Woodland Trust, vision, the volunteers, everyone kind of comes in together to protect nature, protect the wildlife and enhance it, along with providing opportunities. So super exciting stuff.
Everyone will have to come visit.
You have to come visit. Yeah, I always need volunteers, guys. Come along, or just come for a coffee, you know. And yes, that's us kind of in a nutshell.
Take some questions.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. It was very interesting, first of all, to find out about the partnership between the two organisations, and that's something I hadn't appreciated as somebody who'd kind of visited the forest. I used to work in a school in Tower Hamlets, and we would take our children there once a year for a sort of like a lovely community trip, and it was always a really beautiful place to explore. But I actually hadn't appreciated how it was organised and and it's obviously, I haven't been for a few years, so I'm kind of now thinking I must go back and have a look and see what we've been up to. And I was also quite shocked how much had disappeared in that short space of time. I kind of had not really appreciated how much of a smaller remnant was left of what was a huge kind of site. We've had lots of really interesting questions coming through in the chat. Tony, if you want to pick a couple up, if people want to pop their hands up and ask in person as well, we've probably got time to do a couple of questions like that.
I think that would do, but I think I was trying to pick out some, there were so many and so disparate questions as well. I think one of the interesting ones from a management point of view were coming out after Ieva's talk. And there's talk about, for example, it was an interesting actually. Was there any ideas of actually adopting silver pasture? This is from Andrew Planet, about actually using the plots of land around Hainault Forest for livestock. This kind of integrating, I suppose, the surroundings with the needs of the forest.
Yeah, so I don't know, George, how much you know about this. There are certain parts that are being managed.
Yeah, so
do you want to talk about that first?
So the Woodland Trust already has 2 grazing areas in the forest, and their grazing cattle are managed by a local grazier, and they are doing wonders for managing our wood pasture habitat that we've got in the forest, of which the forest would mainly be. But we are also in talks with it's something the Woodland Trust is obviously very keen on when it comes to future land management of sites, trying to encourage landowners and farmers to incorporate more trees on their farms going forward. And it's an incredible opportunity for the partnership that the petting zoo that people might have visited 10, 20 years ago is being restored and reinvigorated as a farm. So our big ambitions, and I think this touches on a question that someone else has asked when it comes to grazing, is to sort of copy the Epping Forest approach of fenceless grazing throughout the forest. So something that the Woodland Trust did in the past was put some fencing all the way through the forest to introduce grazing into the ancient wood pasture. We did this, I think, a bit prematurely, and before we'd done any of the wood pasture restoration that would have provided grasses for the cattle to feed on. But if we have the collar GPS-based system going forward, we can then have a roaming or at least a moving cattle that can be managed by the farm, but then can move throughout the forest and have a light foot approach to its
That's been very successful, actually. We've had that Wanstead Flats as well as Epping Forest with geofencing, which is a really good way of providing good grazing. There's some other questions actually around, I've lost them now, about the rewilding and replanting. And both Helen and JK asked similar kinds of questions about the survival of the whips that you put in, given that you also presumably have a lot of deer
yes.
lurking around. So how have they survived? What sort of success rates have you had?
So our replanting that we did most recently, which I led the events for, we put up an incredible amount of deer fencing around our planting and made sure there were no deer within that space before we planted. We are also using a non-plastic vole guard to protect those whips. We did time our planting with the driest summer we've had for a very, very long time, but we are still looking at 75 to 80% survival rate throughout that drought. Locally, we have shortened our planting season. We used to plant from sort of November through to March, but Hainault Forest we only planted up until Christmas. up until the new year to give all those trees the best chance that they can have to grow onwards.
Interesting. Angie's made a point about pollarding being ideal for silver pasture. I'm going to set one of my own questions now. Is that the pollarding we see in Epping Forest, for example, has been very effective. They've reintroduced that low-level pollarding, which has opened up some fantastic sort of glades in the forest. I mean, thinking about your vertical pollarding, I mean, how do the two compare, and are you going to try and use both techniques or both methods to create more habitats?
Yes, definitely. It's as these things often are, it's a mosaic of habitats that you're really aiming for, and that shredding style is sort of a stepping stone into the more traditional pollarding. What's interesting is the area that we are focusing on, that management effort. You'll find on old maps as Taylor's Plain, so was probably devoid of trees once upon a time. Now has these incredible veterans, but we can't pollard all the trees. What's important is amongst those veterans we also have future veteran pollards, so we're trying to pollard some younger trees as well. And in that silver pasture, the wood pasture area, we've got the next generation of pollards coming in that we're protecting with bramble and things. I feel like there was another question that tied into that quite neatly.
While you're trying to do that, there was a question about the elm whips. Is it the UK or an American strain that's been introduced? Which is an interesting one.
Say that one more time, sorry.
What was the source of the elm whips? Are they a UK resistant strain or something else?
So unfortunately, they didn't have any UK ones left, so they were Dutch instead. So not so far. I can speak in the chat that whether it was American, so it was European. Yeah, that's that.
Two actually, sort of very few questions about wildlife actually, but there were a couple there, both quite important. Were there any bats in the buildings before they were rebuilt? And I can imagine what the answer will be. And also, what about stag beetles? And I noticed your stumps look like likely candidates for the future. But what have you had so far?
I'm praying that we will have stag beetles in them this year. For the bats, first of all, yes, there were bats in the buildings, and there are still bats in the buildings. So we have, I believe, 13 species of bats in the forest, in Hainault Forest. They all live in various spaces. Some of them do live in some of the old buildings. So where the offices were, there is a fake roof, essentially, because the bats like to roost in the roofs. So instead of kind of trying to get them out, instead we've created a fake roof, essentially. So at the bottom we have the office, at the top we have the bat roost. We also have various types of bat boxes on the outside of buildings. Some of them are heated, some of them are not. We also have bat boxes in the forests, various types of trees. We are very bat positive. In terms of the stag beetle, unfortunately no sightings yet. We are hoping that through these kind of measures, through creating stumperies, especially on the edge of the woodland, we'll find some as we start and continue our monitoring.
We've probably got time for one or two more questions just to finish off.
Is there anybody from the audience that wants to speak directly? Give you a couple of seconds. Just pop your hand up and we'll let you in. Meanwhile, actually, on a slightly lighter note, I suspect, so there's a question mark as to whether you want to introduce beavers into the area for your flood management.
We wish. I mean, that could be. That is something that we touched upon very lightly with Thames 21 when they came for their site visit. Unfortunately, in the site that we were showing, which is kind of the vision side of the forest, the space is too small. So if we were to reintroduce beavers, they wouldn't have space to move anywhere. And we're in such an urban area that if they did move, they will end up kind of further into the urban area. I'm not sure whether that's been talked about in the Woodland Trust side. Potentially, I think that's something that we will talk about as the partnership continues.
Yeah, obviously everyone's very excited to reintroduce larger species. Just got to find the space for it.
Talking about larger spaces, you mentioned 11 species of bee on the site. That's a woeful underestimate, I suspect. Just across the road, you've got more than that over on Hog Hill and the area around there. So you need more volunteers to come in and do those surveys on your site.
We do indeed need more volunteers.
So watch this space.
Yes, we have 57 people still with us. If anyone wants to come and do some bee surveys with us, please let us know.
Can I just ask, are those the main groups that you're trying to sort of, I mean, has the site been quite well surveyed, you know, over the years, or are there good records of what's there, or is this something that's going to need to be quite a big focus to get a good sense of, you know, what's kind of happening in terms of the natural history side?
Yeah, really good question. I mean, to a certain degree, there are some records. So we use Giggle at the moment. So all staff, all volunteers, kind of anyone that finds anything, we have a data sheet that we put in. In terms of species specific kind of monitoring, there has been some kind of surveys done, but we do want to create more of a push going forward. Especially, we have a really great breeding ground for skylarks currently. So the management plan was aimed to reintroduce or kind of entice skylarks back into the forest. We now have a thriving population. So now it is kind of the case of finding the right people to survey these and figure out how to kind of adapt the management plan to keep these species. And that goes kind of for everything else as well. That's a very specific example. So it is something that we are currently talking about, how to get it, and kind of how to go forward in understanding in what we actually currently have. This is at least for the vision side of it. Like we said, I mean, the partnership is still very new and we're figuring everything.
It's just, there's been a suggestion, I think Andrew McManus sort of suggesting a BioBlitz kind of approach, which possibly some of the recorders from the LNHS might be interested in coming along too. So
I think that's a good idea. I mean, I think certainly we would. So we should actually organise something. And I know there was some discussion about coming and surveying skylarks from the Wren group as well. So
yeah.
So there are moves afoot, but I think you've got an issue with skylarks being further afield as well, literally in the fields surrounding the forest. So there's a thing there.
There was just a kind of quick thing. I mean, obviously the importance of getting the kind of local community involved and people kind of coming along and enjoying the forest and understanding it more. But I suppose there is a bit of a need to sort of manage that so that it doesn't turn into I think somebody sort of said, into something that's more like a park. With the sort of facilities of a park. So is that kind of quite smooth, the sort of balance between the two, or is there something where there is a little bit of a tension?
Like any park, I think there will always be tension. Like any green space, there will always be tension. We are in progress of getting another kind of senior ecologist into the area, and to help kind of balance those needs of creating kind of the financial stability for the forest, but also making sure that the SSSI areas, the specific species, those aspects are not forgotten about. So it's definitely a balancing act. I don't think Hainault is unique in that. I think Epping Forest also has that, and you know, every green space kind of experiences the balance between enticing people in, but also not too many people at one time.
It tends to be down to car parks. So people don't move very far from a car park, so you can kind of regulate it on that basis.
No, they usually like the Woodland Trust side car parks, because they don't have to pay for them on their side, which kind of controls numbers on our side, although that's not foolproof.
But there's a number of people who said they're going to kind of try and come along and visit. Somebody asked about public transport access to the site, obviously rather than encouraging as many people as possible not to come in cars. So is it reasonably accessible by public transport?
Yeah, I take public transport myself. So the closest tube station would be Hainault. You would have to take a bus unless you want or fancy a 40-minute walk up kind of a mild hill. Otherwise, you can take, so the buses that go there are the 247, the 150 from Ilford, the 397 from King George Hospital, I think. And the bus stop is either Fowler Road or Brocket Way. That's the one, Brocket Way. So it is accessible, and you can take the bike there as well. We're kind of organized. Well, we're trying to get more bike racks. There are currently some. So it's not out in the wilderness.
And if you're on a long walk, we are on the London Outer Orbital Path as well, and the Free Forest Way. So if you are
you're not just wanting the nearest tube or whatever. Yeah, if you're trying to do something further field, but that's great. It's good that kind of so people can get there in a variety of different ways. I'm afraid we're going to have to sort of wind up now because we've kind of got a little bit over, but it's just been really interesting to see, and certainly sounds like there's a lot of exciting things happening, and I'm certainly feeling like I'd like to go tomorrow to have a look at what's going on, but definitely I will make time to kind of go, and certainly thinking about what kind of input we might have in terms of perhaps running some, getting involved in some of the events and with the idea of bio, but it'd be nice to kind of keep the contact between us and what's going on there. So that would be great. I'm going to stop the recording now, but if people would like to sort of say goodbye as they go, thank you very much for coming along. Our next talk will be on the 8th of June. It's going to be another one about forests. So it's about this time about the South London forest. Chris Schuler, who's written a book, The Wood That Built London, is going to speak. So do come along to that. That would make a really nice connection, I think, between the two talks. Thank you very much, and we'll look forward to seeing you all again very soon.
Thank you, everyone.